So I was reading the quarterback, and he took like a 2 or 3 step drop, and he raised up to throw the ball. And from his, from the quarterback's action, I knew that he was going to throw the slant. When Stingley extended, he was off the ground, and he was kind of suspended in the air. And I just hit him with a shoulder, and I thought it was an average hit. I thought I'd have to go back and change my thinking on the way I played football, and I said that's never going to happen.
Football tells us a lie. It tells us that strength is speed, that courage is collision, that immortality lives one snap at a time. But every once in a while, the game tells its ugly truth, and the truth sounds like silence after a hit. This is the story of Darryl Stingley and why survival became his greatest victory. The preceding quote was from John Madden, and it was spoken in the aftermath of an August 12th, 1978 game. A preseason game that wasn't supposed to matter. But on one play, everything mattered. Darryl Stingley caught the ball across the middle, and Jack Tatum, one of the most feared hitters in football, closed in. The collision was violent, unforgiving, final. Stingley dropped to the turf and did not get back up. No touchdown, no flag, just stillness. His neck was broken, his spinal cord damaged. In 1 second, Darryl Stingley's NFL career ended, and his life as he knew it disappeared. Let's talk about Darryl for a second, and I want to attempt to paint a picture, and I want to try to articulate it in a certain type of way so that we all can gain some perspective from it. And it's really to pose the question, right? And I'll get to the question at the end of the video. And Darryl, up until this point, he is playing on his rookie contract, which was still pretty good money, even for the 1970s or the latter part of the 70s. And it gets to a point where he now has the opportunity via the contract negotiation to sign a new contract. And so you can see it up on the screen, and I've adjusted it to include today's inflation. And so they negotiated, it has a ton of incentives on it, but for the most part of it, the base part of the contract, his family's about to become financially set. The only caveat is that they have to get back to the East Coast, they have to get back to Boston in order to sign it. And so they go on this road trip, and this is just the preseason. They play the Rams, they beat the Rams. The following week, they're supposed to play the Raiders, or they're going to play the Raiders. And the team decided to stay in California because it would make no sense to fly back and get jet lag and whatnot, flying back and forth. So they elected to stay after the Rams game in California. So as they head up the California coast, and a couple days prior to the Raider game, Darryl is having some beers with one of his teammates. And he talks about how he has this not old, but he has an omen. And this omen, he felt a particular type of way, that it was a bad omen. And he became so consumed by that omen about how he stated in his words that he felt as if something bad was going to happen. And so as they're driving across the Golden Gate Bridge to get to San Francisco and to Oakland, they arrive at the stadium. He gets dressed in the back, and he's so consumed by the omen, or by the premonition of something catastrophically happening to him, he forgets that he has his wristwatch on. And so he goes out, and nobody plays with a wristwatch, not unless you're Reggie Roby. And so if you old school like me, Reggie Roby with time as punts, he's the only football player I've seen wear a wristwatch. And so he has this moment of self-awareness, and he gives the wristwatch to somebody, and the game starts. And so as the game starts, they run a series of plays, and Jack Tatum is already on his, he's on his BS, and he's already making a beeline for Darryl. And so this particular time, because he's headhunting, Patriots receiver Stanley Morgan is able to streak and go hands-free, make a great catch, and go into the end zone and score an early touchdown. Now remember, this is preseason. Usually in preseason, you got your starters, they're going to play, but in a limited sparing role. And as the first half goes on, eventually the Raiders take the lead. New England's down by 3. And an interesting fact, Steve Grogan was the Patriots quarterback, and he called a play that was called 94 slants, just basically a bunch of slants. Every receiver, you know, your primary, secondary, you have your slot receiver, and you also have your tight end. Everybody's going to run a set of slants. And so if you look back at the beginning of the video where Tatum is talking about the 2 to 3 step drop, Grogan would drop back, he throws the pass. And a flaw of his game, this is per Darryl, was that Grogan would throw the ball, but the ball would sail. He would always zero in on the receiver and lock eyes with the receiver. It makes it more predictable for at least for the defense to know where you're going to throw the ball. You're supposed to make progressions. You're supposed to look off a guy or make your check downs. Well, in this ensuing play, the ball is thrown. It's an uncatchable ball. Darryl still makes his best effort to catch the ball because this is what got him on the threshold of the contract. This lucrative contract, again, that he was about to sign, but he hadn't signed it yet. So as he goes across to run the slant and the ball is too high, with the ball being entirely too high, he's coming on his way back down. And this is per an entry in his book. He sees Jack Tatum making a beeline yet again. Their eyes interlock. And now you see this immovable object coming at you, and so quick to where now the only thing you can do is brace for impact, and bam, he's hit. As Darryl is hit, Darryl falls onto the ground, and Darryl is still conscious, but he realizes that there's something going on, something that's wrong, because the trainer comes out, and then he summons the physician comes out. They're doing all these different tests to validate his consciousness, his ability to have sensation and feel it, and nothing's happening because he can't move his neck, he can't move his body, he can't move his legs, his arms, his toes, he can't squeeze anybody's hands. He's going through the motions because now he asks this one simple question: am I going to be all right? And so as everybody that has this collective gasp or this silence, as people are high-fiving Jack Tatum on the sideline because, yeah, Jack, you got another notch under your belt. You knocked this guy out. You really creamed this clout. You play Raider football. Now, I'm not against playing Raider football or playing the game as it's supposed to be played, but when you have ill will, when you have essentially malice or with the intent to do harm, that's called malice. That's deliberately going beyond the purpose of the game to harm someone. And so he lay on the ground, as Darryl lay on the ground. He's transported by ambulance with a police escort to a ready to receive medical facility, and he undergoes surgery for several hours. And all he remembers is the blaring sirens as he was making his way by a police motorcade to the hospital. And then he blacks out after seeing so many people around him and just in this frantic state. And so Darryl went through a traumatic experience, and now he has a halo on his head, not a halo for an angel, but a halo where it's a medical device where these screws are put into your skull and you have an 80-pound weight to immobilize or stabilize your spine. All from someone who was hell-bent on trying to, I don't know what he was trying to do other than kill him, because he came close. Darryl talked about if his head wasn't positioned in a certain type of way on the field, he was almost to a point where he was suffocated. He could no longer breathe on his own. He had no control over any of his faculties at all. And so I want you to think about that. You've worked your tail off. You've got to a point where you're ready to sign and take care of your family, sign this great contract. You are a rising star in the league, and for it to be taken away like that, how would you feel? So Darryl's recovery was a very grueling recovery. And as you can imagine, that you would have this kaleidoscope of emotions. You will more than likely have a lot of negative emotions. You'd be angry, you'd be bitter, you'd be disappointed, you'd be frustrated. And that's just for the sake of being a human in the core of human fabric, right? That we'll feel some way if something happens to us. And undergoing a ton of physical therapy, occupational therapy, Darryl actually learned how to reuse. He regained some movement in his right arm and fingers, so he had to be able to write again. He also was able to use his motorized wheelchair. He talked about how he was a recipient of, at the time, a technological advanced motorized wheelchair. And not only that, very interesting, some celebrities were able to go and see him and wish him well. Marvin Gaye of Motown fame went out to go see him. John Madden, ironically, every single day. There was not a day missed. Irregardless if it were a holiday or not, John Madden, the then coach of the Raiders, famous broadcaster, went out to go see Darryl every single day. He went to see Darryl every day. And so this man has his own life. He's a head coach of a football team. He's not only that, he's a husband, he's a dad. He's all these things wrapped up into one, and yet he still found the time to go see Darryl. And so the NFL initially didn't want anything to do with the incident, to where Darryl had to essentially had to sue the NFL. And so the case was in pending litigation, and eventually the NFL and Darryl's camp agreed to a settlement where Darryl was to be cared for, and that he believed he received some type of injury settlement or pension, but it was a lifetime benefit. And it was obviously a shame that something like that were to happen at the hands of another man. And I think that Jack Tatum invalidated his Hall of Fame status, or I would say pretty much a slam dunk as far as him ending up with a gold jacket. When he did that, or hit that guy, or hit Darryl, he invalidated himself. I think that it was a coward move. I think that hitting a defensive receiver, I understand getting the psychological edge, but to hit somebody in that way to where he's coming down and you jam his neck and you paralyze him, that's just, I guess it's just a spineless move, and no pun intended, right, with the term that was used. And then I also find it very disheartening that for well over 25 years, you never tried to go see Darryl. You initially tried to go see him when the incident, not accident, because accidents are something that you can't control. The incident that he caused, rightfully so, the doctor stopped him. It just wasn't a good time. They were trying to assess the damage, and his family was on the way to the hospital, so it just would have been a tense situation. That made sense, but once everything started to settle, there were plenty of opportunities for Jack to reach out. Let me give you something real quick before I end this video. There was an incident between college football back in the late 80s. There was a football player by the name of Chucky Mullins, and he was involved in a similar incident, but this was an actual, accident. And I believe the fullback was for Vanderbilt, and his first name was Tommy. The last name escapes me, and they became friends. And unfortunately, Chucky, who was a defensive back for Ole Miss, passed away due to from complications becoming a quadriplegic due to an accident on the football field. To this very day, Tommy goes and cleans and spends time with Chucky at his headstone. So through incidents, through tragedies, through different occurrences in life, we still have the ability to reach out and to create a relationship, no matter how tense, no matter how hard it is. And then not only that, you could have dealt with zero fanfare. It could have just been you and him behind closed doors, and you talk things out and you smooth things over. Because as I stated early in the video, that Darryl was on the verge of signing a lucrative contract, and he deserved that contract because he played his butt off. And for that to be taken away, his ability to create a sustainable life, a pleasurable life for his family, you got to feel for a guy like that. But I think the beautiful thing of it is that it's more so bittersweet, because although he was stricken down from a physical standpoint, his inner being as a person, that he didn't give up. He learned how to, again, like I said, he learned to use his wheelchair. He learned to use his right arm. He learned to use his right hand. He learned to write again. He learned how to do a ton of other things that most people would have just given up or remained bitter for the rest of their life. Because you got to realize that forgiveness is for you, not for them. But Jack Tatum, he, as the thumbnail, you look at the thumbnail, is Malice. So let's engage in the comments. Let me know what y'all think. You think he should have been in the Hall of Fame? Do you think they should have met? Let me know. So this is Beer Declare for All Things Considered. Take a look at the rest of my work, because I got to go on this video, but you don't have to go. Your ATC journey can continue. And share and subscribe, and we'll see y'all on the next one. Take care.
Part of this piece, he said that all of the emotions associated with the 25th anniversary of this event were kind of overwhelming for him, so that was part of the reason why he declined. He's also expressed resentment in the past that when Jack Tatum has made some overtures toward contacting him, in Stingley's view, it's always been when television cameras would have been around or when Jack Tatum had something to sell, such as a book, and apparently Stingley resents that.